When I first started looking at the picture for the unprecedented wreckage video, and I think I mentioned it in the video, that frankly I was kind of freaked out. The amount of damage and all of that technology and crafts, I mean, there was a lot of stuff. There is a lot of stuff there. And then the next video was another picture, same thing. And while I was freaked out about it, I had a little bit of relief in knowing that, well, it was, it happened a long time ago. It was pretty old, but a lot of people died. And then I started looking more closely at some of these anomalies of this metal stuff sticking out the side of the hillsides, when I realized that it's not just the stuff that's on top of the ground. These entire bluffs are made up entirely of technology, of construction, of I don't know what. But you will be really hard pressed to find an actual rock in any of these pictures. And so I went back to feeling freaked out again, because if there's a race out there that was willing to completely destroy this fleet of ships or whatever all this technology was, and all the people that went with it, that was pretty scary. But when I think about the number of people that died, that are entombed inside these what we think are bluffs, freaks me out again, because somebody was willing to kill a lot of people. Look at that hillside there. Is there anything about that that looks natural? In that big twisted bent part that comes down, what is that? And while these shapes here are interesting, I'm really mostly interested in the flat surfaces, the walls, or what you think are the rocks. And you can see the texture of them. It's almost like tiles in a way. This is either the hull of some kinds of ships, or, well, I couldn't say. What I do know, though, is it's definitely not rocks. And when you saw these big hunks of metal and all this stuff sticking out of the sides from bottom to top, what is that, 500 feet? So 500 feet down, you have something sticking out of the sides. Look at this big thing that fell here. You might, under normal circumstances, think that's a rock, but it's not a rock. You can see the tubes and pipes and stuff sticking out of it. But look behind, up against the wall. Look at that wall, that rock wall. Doesn't look like rock. And I noticed that whenever there's an opportunity where sunlight hits these surfaces, they reflect back. So if the sun were shining in the shaded area here, a lot of this would be shiny. This part right here is exposed to the sun. All these things here exposed to the sun are shiny. And I suppose there's going to be a certain amount of dust over all this stuff one place or another. And then one of the things I really don't understand is, while I am absolutely convinced that none of this is rock, is how you have all of these metal levels cracked. Is it that this was all so old? Now look at that right there. See how that shines in the sun? Is it that all this stuff is so old that all this alloy metal is now brittle and it's cracking under its own weight? I don't really get the cracks. There's a lot I don't understand. And so these hilltops, these bluffs, are they the remainder of what was more like them? Have they eroded down with wind over time? I mean, how would everything get just stacked up in one bluff? And all along you see these rows, and again, when you look closely, you can see that everything is segmented. You see equal-sized segments creating these rows. And this kind of reminds me of a place that some of you may remember I've been to quite a few times and will go back to, called Vera Rubin Ridge. In Vera Rubin Ridge, you can clearly see a layered construction. They build on top, on top, on top, on top of each other. And while this looks somewhat like a layered construction, it's still a little bit different than what we saw at Vera Rubin Ridge. But I think it's interesting how you see all these individual segments. It's hard to say why it's like that. Maybe it was easier to manufacture. Maybe it's more resistant to whatever. Again, you see the stuff up on the top and it's shining away brightly. Everything in the shade just kind of looks like rock. And again, until you look a little more closely, and you see all those segments. This is all throughout. So yeah, it's there was a very, very large number of people that died here. And if it's buried 500 feet down at the bottom of a pile of construction or technology, whatever it is, and some of it's becoming exposed and some of it's falling off, then again it must be really old. I mean, could it be millions of years old? Could be. But it still freaks me out to know that there are people out there, an existence, a civilization that's willing to inflict total destruction, total war. People die too, not just stuff, not just war machines. Everybody dies. I've said a couple of times that I had hoped for more. I have in my repertoire pictures of tanks, military-looking equipment. I don't think it's any different there than it is here, except they're older and they have much, much better weapons. Look at these girders sticking out with all that gold and silver stuff. Now, if you didn't see all of these vertical cracks and you just saw the horizontal lines, you know, that would be a little easier to understand, but I don't understand really how these vertical cracks happen. Unless, again, it was just very old and all this metal has become crystallized and, finally breaking up. Look at that. Look at that. There is nothing rock about that right there. You have the segmented metal plates or whatever they are in the front, and there's that big gap on the left. And you can see how the smooth part on the left is shaped. Kind of reminds you of what they do with a hammer and copper. You've seen those hammered bowls. It looks like that. And here's another classic example of the big bluff or cliff or hillside. It's got this pretty blue stuff here in the middle. Again, that's not really blue. It's silver and gold. It's metallic. And then to the left of this, you can see the beginnings of more of those rows. There's a big structure that looks like it was part of something at one time. Was this a flying bridge on a ship? Did it have openings at the top for things to go in and out? And this video really isn't about all the wreckage on tops of the hills, on the tops of the hills. It's really about the hills or the bluffs themselves. The difference is you can see the structures or the crafts or the broken up technology on the surface, and on the side, when you're looking at the sides of these bluffs, you only see the sides and what happens to be sticking out. And I know it seems hard to believe, trust me. And I've spent a lot of time looking at these pictures, and I'm going to continue to study these pictures. But I feel very confident in what I'm saying, that this is no rock, and none of this is rock. How does it get stacked up like this? And is this layered construction? It's almost like the Jolly Green Giant came along and stepped on it and squished it all down. And how many people died? We're just looking at these bluffs. There's vast tracts of land behind these things that are scattered with all sorts of wreckage. How large of an area are we talking here? And you know, I've written off anything NASA says, and I doubted what this Brandenburg guy said about nuclear war, but I'll consider that a possibility. Probably more likely than not. But a friend of mine said, how do you know? Maybe it was a miniature black hole that drifted by and touched down for a minute. Well, you know, it's as good as any other guess, I guess. I am showing a couple shots of stuff on the surface. I don't know what that was. Maybe it was a long cigar-shaped vessel, and it ended up with a hard landing. This looks like one of those little domes I've been talking about where they're spread out. Looks like there's another one down at the 3 o'clock position, a little one. I think people are living there, and I think they're living in those things. But whenever you look at the surface, just about anywhere, it's a mess. You're not looking at rocks. The resolution isn't that good. I've got the zoom in as far as it'll go on this, and it's probably good that it doesn't go any further because it would just get worse. There's another little area I happened to spot. I thought it was worth pointing out. It's kind of a rectangular shaped area here, just on the other side of this sandy area. And it's in the sun, and you can see it's reflecting everywhere. It looks sort of rectangular. It's all metal. All of that is metal. Look at that. Look at that. I can't even imagine. Well, you'd sure have to make sure you have your tetanus shot walking around this place. And this entire hillside here. Is there any one thing there that looks like a rock? I don't think so. Now this bluff up here looks pretty natural, except for the things sticking out and what we see on top. But it looks like a bluff. And you have your typical sand and rocks, you know, that's raining down. That'll eventually fall down towards the bottom. There's nothing about that sand and rocks that is sand and rocks. That's all bits of metal. Every bit of it. Giant piles of small pieces of metal. What in the heck? So all of that falls off of the bluffs. It's an amazing place, and we'll be coming back here. Thanks for watching, everyone.